Alex Carter was nervous. This wasn't just any diplomatic mission. It was his first official mission on behalf of the United Nations Galactic Peace Division. He had been sent to meet with the Zalrith, a highly advanced alien species known for their power and strategic intelligence. For years, humanity had been trying to establish peaceful relations with other alien races, and the Zalrith were one of the most important. If successful, this mission could change the course of history for the human race. As Alex's shuttle descended through the thick clouds of the alien planet, his mind raced. The Zalrith were unlike any species humanity had encountered before. They were tall, with dark, metallic skin and glowing blue eyes that could pierce through any semblance of disguise. The Queen, the leader of their civilization, was known for her strength and wisdom. However, she was also known for her harsh rule, and no one ever questioned her authority. They simply followed her commands. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had prepared for this moment for months, but now that it was finally here, he felt an overwhelming sense of doubt. He had never dealt with beings so powerful, so different from humans. His training had taught him how to handle different cultures, how to negotiate, and how to maintain peace. But nothing had prepared him for the unknown. The ramp of the shuttle opened with a hiss, and Alex stepped out into the alien world. He was greeted by two Zalrith soldiers, each towering over him. They had silvery armor that reflected the harsh light of the twin suns hanging in the sky. Their weapons hung by their sides, sleek and deadly, but their expressions remained neutral, almost stoic. "Follow us," one of the soldiers said in perfect English. His voice was deep, like the rumbling of distant thunder. Alex nodded and followed, his eyes taking in the alien landscape. The ground was a deep shade of purple, dotted with jagged rock formations that reached into the sky like ancient spires. In the distance, towering metal structures loomed over the land, housing the Zalrith cities. They walked in silence for what felt like an eternity, passing through wide, sterile streets lined with statues of Zalrith heroes and leaders. The air smelled metallic, like freshly forged steel. The silence was oppressive, but Alex did his best to remain composed. His heart was still pounding, but he had to remind himself that he was here for a reason, to represent humanity. Finally, they reached a massive, imposing building, a palace unlike anything Alex had ever seen. It was made of dark metal, gleaming in the sunlight with sharp angles and towering spires. The entrance was flanked by two enormous statues, each depicting a regal-looking Zalrith warrior. Alex took a deep breath and stepped inside, his boots clicking against the smooth floor. The interior was even more impressive. The walls were lined with holographic displays, projecting images of distant star systems and the history of the Zalrith people. Everything was meticulously organized, from the gleaming floors to the towering pillars that seemed to reach endlessly into the sky above. It felt like stepping into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. They led him through a vast corridor, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that told the story of the Zalrith's ancient ancestors. The air was filled with the hum of advanced technology, and Alex could hear the soft echo of footsteps as they continued on their way. His guide didn't speak, but Alex was keenly aware of how closely they were watching him, their eyes calculating as if trying to figure him out. At last, they arrived at the throne room. It was vast, with a high ceiling that made the room feel both grand and oppressive. The throne itself was made of dark stone, adorned with glowing blue symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. And there, seated on the throne, was Queen Carva. She was the embodiment of power. Tall and elegant, her black metallic skin shimmered under the light and her eyes glowed a fierce blue. Her presence filled the room, demanding attention and respect. She wore elaborate armor that seemed to be part of her skin, as though she had been born with it. Her long, flowing hair was streaked with silver, cascading down her back like a waterfall of liquid metal. As Alex approached the throne, he tried to maintain his composure. His heart was racing, but he reminded himself that this was his moment. This was why he was here. He had prepared for this encounter, and now he needed to show the Zalrith that humanity could be a valuable ally. The Queen's gaze locked with his, and for a moment, Alex felt as though she could see right through him. Her piercing eyes seemed to look into his very soul. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The weight of her gaze was almost unbearable, but Alex stood his ground. He knew that this was a test, a test of his resolve, his purpose, and his ability to represent his people. To his surprise, the queen did something that no one had expected. She slowly stood from her throne, and for a moment Alex thought she was about to strike him down. Instead, she did something even more unexpected. She knelt down before him. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He had no idea what was happening. The queen, who commanded the respect of an entire species, had just lowered herself before a human. The room fell deathly silent, and for a moment, Alex felt a wave of confusion wash over him. Why was she kneeling? What had he done to deserve such a gesture? The other Zalrith in the room seemed just as shocked, their eyes wide with disbelief. The soldiers who had escorted him here shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to speak. Alex stood frozen, unsure of how to react. His mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. Was this a sign of respect, a cultural gesture, or something deeper, something far more mysterious? Queen Carva's eyes remained locked on Alex as she knelt, her posture graceful despite the unexpected nature of the gesture. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low but clear, echoing throughout the chamber. "You are the one we have waited for," she said, her words sending a chill down Alex's spine. "The prophecy. It is true." Alex was stunned. He had no idea what she was talking about. Prophecy? What did the queen mean by that? Why had she knelt before him? Before he could say anything, the Zalrith soldiers stepped forward, their expressions filled with awe and uncertainty. One of them, a tall male with glowing red eyes, finally spoke. "Your Majesty, we did not know this. This is impossible." The queen raised her hand, silencing them. "It is true," she said, her voice unwavering. "The human who would change the fate of our people has arrived. He stands before us now." Alex had no idea what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine. Alex stood frozen in the middle of the grand throne room, unable to fully understand what was happening. The queen had just knelt before him, a powerful being who was known throughout the galaxy for her commanding presence. He had always imagined diplomatic meetings to be tense but respectful, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment. The room was filled with an eerie silence, and Alex could feel the weight of every eye in the room upon him. The soldiers, the dignitaries, everyone watched as if waiting for some kind of confirmation that what they had just witnessed was real. The queen's gaze never left his face. Her blue eyes, glowing with intensity, seemed to be searching for something deep within him. Alex didn't know what to say, or even if he should say anything at all. He felt a strange mix of fear and awe, his heart racing in his chest. This was not how diplomatic meetings were supposed to go. This was something entirely different, something bigger than either of them. The silence stretched on, and the tension in the room grew thick. Finally, Queen Carva spoke, her voice calm and steady. "You do not know why I kneel before you, Alex Carter, but it is because of a prophecy that has been passed down through the generations of my people. The prophecy speaks of a human who would come from the stars, a human whose presence would change the fate of the galaxy." Alex blinked, still trying to make sense of her words. "A prophecy?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. The queen nodded slowly. "Yes, for centuries my people have waited for the arrival of the one who would either save us or destroy us. The human who would bring a new era of peace, or one of war. The signs have been clear for years, but it was only when I saw you enter this room that I knew you were the one." Alex's mind raced. A prophecy? He wasn't some hero from ancient myths. He was just a diplomat, a man sent to talk and negotiate with alien races. But the way the queen spoke, the way she looked at him, it felt like he had just stepped into something far more complicated than he could ever have imagined. "Why me?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse. "I'm just a man, I don't understand." Queen Carva rose to her feet, towering over him. Her presence was overwhelming, but there was a softness in her expression that Alex had not expected. "It is not about who you are, Alex Carter. It is about what you represent. Humanity has been chosen not for your power, but for your potential, the potential to change the balance of the universe." Alex could feel his chest tighten with confusion and disbelief. "I don't understand," he repeated. "What do you mean, chosen? Why me?" The queen's gaze softened, and for a moment she appeared almost vulnerable. "We Zalrith have been watching humanity for centuries. You are a species unlike any we have ever encountered. You are small, fragile, and yet you possess a power that none of the other species can comprehend, a power of resilience, of survival. It is that power that the prophecy speaks of. The strength of humanity lies not in its technology, but in its spirit. Alex was still processing her words, struggling to find meaning in them. He had always been proud of humanity's achievements, its exploration of the stars, its rise to power among the galactic community. But this was something entirely new. He had never considered that humanity's greatest strength might be something so intangible. "There's more," the Queen continued, her voice quiet but intense. "The prophecy also speaks of a time when the Zalrith will fall. When our civilization, as mighty as it is, will crumble under the weight of our own mistakes. The only hope for our survival lies in the hands of the human who can lead us to salvation, or to ruin. You, Alex Carter, are that human." Alex felt a cold chill run through him. This was no longer just about diplomacy. It was no longer just about speaking on behalf of humanity. He had become part of something much larger, something that could decide the fate of entire civilizations. He wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't ready to bear that kind of responsibility. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, still reeling from the weight of her words. "You do not need to speak," the Queen said, her voice softening. "The prophecy has already begun. You have already entered the fold. Now all that remains is for you to understand what it means, and what you must do." Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "But how do I do that? How do I fulfill a prophecy when I don't even know what it is?" The Queen's expression hardened slightly, and her eyes flickered with something that looked like regret. "The first step is to understand the trials that await you. The galaxy is filled with enemies who would seek to destroy us. The Zalrith are not the only species with power, and there are those who would use the prophecy to their advantage. You must be ready to face them." "What kind of trials?" Alex asked, his voice trembling slightly. "The trials are not for the faint of heart," Queen Carva said. "They are tests of strength, will, and loyalty. You will face challenges that will push you to your limits, but in the end, they will shape you into the leader you are destined to become." Alex looked into her eyes, feeling a strange pull. "And if I fail?" The Queen's gaze darkened. "If you fail, the galaxy will fall into chaos. The Zalrith will perish, and humanity will be lost among the stars. But if you succeed, you will bring about an era of peace that will echo throughout the galaxy." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Alex felt the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. He was no longer just a diplomat. He was part of something much greater, something that could reshape the future of the universe. But the pressure of that responsibility was overwhelming. He didn't know if he was ready to carry the weight of entire civilizations on his shoulders. "We will begin the trials soon," the Queen said, her voice steady once again. "But first you must learn what it means to be one of us. You must understand the Zalrith, our history, and our struggles. Only then will you be able to lead us." Alex nodded slowly, still processing everything she had told him. He had always known that his mission here would be difficult, but he never imagined it would lead to this prophecy, this weighty responsibility that seemed to hang over his every word and action. "We'll begin at dawn," Queen Carva said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Rest, Alex Carter. Tomorrow your true journey begins." As Alex turned to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he could never have anticipated. The weight of the prophecy, the future of the Zalrith, and the fate of humanity all rested on his shoulders. And in the quiet of that moment, he wondered if he was truly the one the galaxy had been waiting for, or if he was about to fail miserably. The days that followed were unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. Each morning, he awoke to the sound of distant bells ringing through the palace, signaling the start of a new day. He was escorted to the training grounds, a massive open area filled with strange, alien devices and structures. The ground was made of smooth stone, and in the center of the area stood a large, shimmering pillar of light that seemed to pulse with energy. Alex had been told that this was only the beginning of his trials. Queen Carva had explained that these trials would test everything about him: his strength, his ability to lead, and his willingness to sacrifice. The first trial, she had told him, would be one of survival, but survival in this place was not what Alex had expected. It was more than just staying alive. It was about understanding the very essence of the Zalrith people and their struggles. To survive here, he needed to think as they did, act as they did, and perhaps even become one of them. The first trial was held in the wilderness outside the palace. Alex was given a simple set of clothes, rough, dark fabric that felt strange against his skin, and a small pack containing basic supplies. No weapons, no armor. He was told that he would need to rely on his wits and instincts to survive. "You must remember Alex Carter," the Queen had said as she looked him in the eye. "The Zalrith have always fought to survive. It is in our blood. To be weak is to fail. You must embrace the strength within you." Alex nodded, but inside he felt the familiar weight of doubt. Could he do this? Could he really survive in a strange world that was so different from Earth? The trial began at dawn. He was led into a dense forest, unlike anything he had seen before. The trees towered above him, their leaves glowing faintly in the dim light. Strange creatures could be heard in the distance, their calls echoing through the thick canopy. He was alone, cut off from any help, and the only way forward was to move deeper into the forest. As he walked, Alex noticed the air felt thick, as though the forest itself was alive. The trees seemed to watch him, and every sound, every rustle in the underbrush sent a jolt of fear through his body. He had to be alert. He had to survive. Hours passed as he made his way through the forest. He encountered strange creatures, many of them larger than anything on Earth, with glowing eyes and sharp claws. Some watched him from the shadows, but none attacked. For now, they seemed content to observe. He was exhausted, hungry, and thirsty, but he kept moving. The Queen had told him that this was just the beginning. The real test would come when he least expected it. He had no idea what that meant, but he couldn't afford to stop. Every step was a reminder of how far he had come from the safe, controlled world of Earth. Here there were no rules. There were no boundaries. As the sun began to set, Alex found himself at the edge of a cliff. Below, he could see a wide river, its waters flowing swiftly toward an unknown destination. The water seemed to call to him, its rushing current a promise of escape from the harshness of the forest. But as he stepped closer to the edge, he saw something that made him pause. A large, dark figure was moving toward him from the trees. It was massive, with glowing red eyes and long, gnarled limbs. Alex's heart raced as he realized he was not alone. The creature's eyes locked onto his, and it let out a low, rumbling growl. Instinctively, Alex reached for his pack, but it was empty, no weapons, no tools to defend himself. His only choice was to face the creature head-on or find a way to escape. His mind raced. What would the Zalrith do in this situation? How would they survive? In that moment, he understood. The Zalrith had lived for centuries on the edge of survival. They didn't rely on weapons or armor alone. They relied on their ability to think, to adapt, to survive. Without thinking, Alex turned and ran toward the river. The creature pursued him, its massive feet thundering against the ground. Alex's breath came in short gasps as he pushed himself harder, the sound of the creature's footsteps growing louder in his ears. He reached the edge of the river just as the creature was about to catch him. Without hesitating, he dove into the rushing water. The current was strong, pulling him under. For a moment, Alex struggled to stay afloat, his mind panicking as the cold water rushed over him. But he fought against the current, using every ounce of strength he had left. His body was numb from the cold, but he kept swimming, pushing himself further away from the shore. The creature's growls grew fainter as Alex swam deeper into the river. He didn't know how far he had gone or how long he had been in the water, but eventually the sound of pursuit faded. He had escaped. Exhausted, Alex finally crawled onto the opposite shore, his body trembling from the cold. He lay there for a moment, gasping for air, his mind racing. He had survived. He had passed the first trial, but it hadn't been easy. As the darkness settled around him, Alex realized something important. Surviving this trial was not just about defeating the creature. It was about learning how to think like the Zalrith, about understanding their struggle for survival. He had relied on his instincts just as they would have. In that moment, he had become more than just a diplomat. He had become a part of their world. The next day, Alex was brought back to the palace. Queen Carva was waiting for him, her expression unreadable as she looked him over. "Well done," she said, her voice as cold and regal as ever. "You have completed the first trial, but the real tests are yet to come. The galaxy does not care for weakness. To lead, you must be prepared to sacrifice everything." Alex nodded, his body still aching from the ordeal. He had survived, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Zalrith had faced trials far greater than anything he could imagine. And now, it seemed, it was his turn to prove that humanity was capable of something more than just survival. He had passed the first test, but would he be able to face the trials to come? The weight of the prophecy, of his role in the galaxy's future, hung heavily on his shoulders. Every step he took felt like a step toward something greater, something far beyond his understanding. And yet, as he stood before Queen Carva, he realized that there was no turning back. The trials had only just begun. Alex's body was sore, his muscles aching from the brutal test he had endured. The cold river water, the relentless creature, and the exhaustion had taken their toll. But there was no time to rest. Queen Carva had already made it clear that the trials would not stop, and neither would the pressure that was now weighing down on him. The day after his survival trial, Alex was summoned back to the throne room. Queen Carva was waiting for him, her blue eyes sharp and intense. There was no kindness in her gaze, only a quiet strength that seemed to hold the very air in the room still. She was the queen, a leader of her people, and now she had chosen him as a key player in their future. "Alex Carter," she began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of history, "you have passed the first trial, but this is not enough. You must prove yourself in other ways. The galaxy does not give second chances." Alex stood before her, his mind still racing from the encounter in the forest. He had expected to be congratulated, perhaps even given some time to rest, but instead he was being pushed forward into more trials. His instincts told him to be cautious, to question everything, but he had no choice but to move forward. The fate of the Zalrith and possibly of humanity depended on his success. "What must I do next?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. Queen Carva's expression softened, though only slightly. "You must prove your ability to lead. Your strength lies not only in surviving, but in guiding others. There is an ancient relic hidden in the farthest reaches of this world that holds the key to the future. You will retrieve it. It will be a test of your leadership, your courage, and your resolve." Alex nodded, understanding the gravity of the task ahead. The Queen was not asking him to simply retrieve an artifact. She was asking him to demonstrate that he could lead the Zalrith, to show that humanity could stand beside them in their darkest hour. The journey to retrieve the relic was not an easy one. The Queen's soldiers led him to a small, unmarked ship, the only vessel capable of making the journey to the remote location. As he climbed aboard, he realized that this would be different from his previous trials. There would be no creatures to fight, no forests to navigate. This trial would be about something far more difficult: his ability to make decisions, to command, and to push forward despite the unknowns. As the ship soared through the alien skies, Alex looked out at the vast expanse of the planet. He had never seen anything like it: mountains that seemed to reach the stars, valleys deep and dark, and deserts that stretched beyond the horizon. The world was beautiful in its own way, but also harsh and unforgiving. It was a place that had shaped the Zalrith into the fierce, resilient people they were. And now, Alex was here, playing a role he could not have imagined when he first stepped onto this world. The ship's sensors were set to guide them to the location of the relic. It was a temple, located in the heart of a massive desert. The journey was long, and the ship was battered by fierce winds that shook the vessel. Alex had been through many challenges before, but this felt different. This was not a test of physical strength or survival. This was a test of his mind, his ability to stay calm in the face of uncertainty and lead with clarity. Hours later, the ship landed in the heart of the desert. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the golden sands. The temple was distant, its spires rising like jagged teeth from the horizon. Alex felt the weight of the mission settle over him once more. He had to succeed. There was no room for failure. As he stepped off the ship, the heat of the desert sun beat down on him. He could feel the weight of the Zalrith soldiers behind him, their silent presence a reminder of the expectations that came with this mission. They did not speak as they followed him, but Alex knew that their eyes were on him, watching his every move. The journey to the temple was long and exhausting. The sand seemed to stretch on forever, and the air was dry, making each breath feel like it was being drawn through a thick curtain. Alex could feel the harshness of the desert environment taking its toll. His skin burned under the relentless sun, and his body ached from the long trek. But he kept moving, pushing forward, knowing that the trial would only end once the relic was in his hands. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at the entrance to the temple. The massive stone doors were covered in intricate carvings, the symbols of the Zalrith etched into the surface. It was clear that this temple held great significance, not just as a place of worship, but as a symbol of the Zalrith's past and future. Alex stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The doors groaned open, revealing a dark, ancient hall. The air inside was cool, but heavy with dust and the weight of history. The walls were lined with statues of Zalrith ancestors, their eyes staring down at him as he moved through the temple. The silence inside was deafening, broken only by the soft sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone. The relic was located deep within the temple, hidden away in a chamber that could only be accessed by solving a series of complex puzzles. The walls were covered in symbols and mechanisms that seemed to shift and change as Alex examined them. He knew that this was the true test. The Queen had not just sent him to retrieve the relic, she had sent him to prove that he could think critically, that he could understand the challenges before him and find a way through them. For hours, Alex worked through the puzzles, his mind focused and determined. The symbols on the walls began to make sense as he connected them with the knowledge he had gained during his time with the Zalrith. The puzzles were not just tests of intelligence. They were tests of patience, of understanding the deeper meaning of the Zalrith culture and their struggle for survival. As the final puzzle clicked into place, the chamber doors opened, revealing the relic, a small, glowing orb that floated in the center of the room. The orb emitted a soft, pulsing light, and as Alex approached it, he could feel its power. This was no ordinary artifact. It was something ancient, something that had the potential to change the future of the Zalrith and humanity alike. Alex reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he took the orb into his palm. The moment his fingers touched the smooth surface, he felt a surge of energy run through him. The orb seemed to resonate with his very being, as if it recognized him as its rightful holder. He could feel its power deep within him, as though the orb was speaking to him, showing him the path forward. As he stood in the heart of the temple, holding the relic in his hands, Alex knew that this was only the beginning. The trials had not been just about survival or strength. They had been about understanding the galaxy, understanding the Zalrith, and understanding himself. He was no longer just a diplomat. He was something more, something greater. He had proven that humanity could stand alongside the Zalrith, that they could face the challenges of the galaxy together. But the real test was yet to come. The relic, the power it held, and the prophecy that had brought him here, these were only pieces of the puzzle. Alex had unlocked one part of the mystery, but there were still many more pieces to find. As he turned to leave the temple, the weight of the orb in his hand felt heavier than ever. He was ready for whatever came next. The fate of the Zalrith and humanity rested on his shoulders.